Welcome to Bonus Banter, where we answer your questions and talk about nothing.
It's bigger. It's better. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Bonus Banter number 2. Welcome back to Bonus Banter, everyone. I hope everyone has been enjoying Bonus Banter.
I hope you think it sucks.
I have been loving this idea.
Angry.
I have been thoroughly enjoying the time to just, before we record the rest of our episodes in a day, just sit down and talk about absolutely nothing.
Yeah. It's quite delightful. Mm-hmm.
It's almost just
Get
like
ready
regular
for
hanging
20
out.
minutes of silence.
Listen, the best talk shows have no substance to them whatsoever.
I mean, that's like most, honestly, that's
Sustenance?
most other podcasts.
Do you mean substance or sustenance?
Why not both?
Like,
Por qué no los dos?
Okay.
In the most respectful sense, a lot of other podcasts are just people talking about whatever. And we have the obligation to actually learn a game and play it and make it sound good. So when we get the chance to just talk about nothing, it's freaking great. But we're going to talk about very specific nothings sent in by our listener.
Nothings that are important to some people, maybe even something.
But it's funny, this week I was actually planning to just talk about a couple things anyway. There was something I wanted us to talk about, but we got a listener question in this morning.
Yeah.
Before we started recording.
Send in more questions. Give us more.
Oh, please don't give us too many, but yes.
Don't give us too many
is
so
not
we
too
can
many.
ignore people. I want to feel popular.
We got a question from someone that I don't think has responded on YouTube before, which is great because that's what Bonus Banter is all about. Is we've been active on our YouTube comment section, of course, but Bonus Banter, if you don't want to deal with YouTube and you want to send in something for us to talk about, it lets you the podcast first people have a way to interact with the show more directly. And we got a question from Jan in Germany. Is there anything you feel is still missing from Pathfinder 2nd Edition, such as ancestries, classes, adventure stereotypes, or anything else? Personally, I'd love to see the Shifter class make a comeback as a full martial, as Wild Druid is rather underwhelming at fulfilling the shapeshifter power fantasy. Also, pirate adventure. Yar. Agreed on all points. Yeah. So why don't we kick it around the table? Is there anything from maybe Pathfinder 1st Edition or just from other RPGs that you feel like is not represented? Or is there just some concept that you have that you wish you could see further fleshed out in 2E?
Well, I'll just start off first. I'm quite happy with 2E. Everything that I enjoyed doing in Pathfinder 1E has only gotten better by being in 2E. So I'm a bit of an oddball here. I didn't play any niche classes that I desperately want to see back. I didn't enjoy 1,000,001 options that overwhelmed me and had traps. I love the balance. I love the stuff. I don't love the crunch. I will say that sometimes I have been a little underwhelmed with some of the options for Swashbuckler, which apparently is a bit of a consensus online. But I'm really happy with 2E. Just going to start with we good.
That's fair. I feel like what makes 2E really strong and also underwhelms some people at the same time is that it has a lot of options, obviously. It has a lot of classes. But where in 1E, you just got a feat every odd level and you had a massive pool of all the feats to choose from. And the only restrictions were the feat prerequisites. There weren't traits in 2E you have different categories of feat. You got skill feat, ancestry feat, general feat, and class feat. And so there's a lot of feats, but they're separated into smaller lists that you qualify for.
Which
so
to me makes it better.
Whenever you're making a decision, you have a smaller list of things to choose from. Whereas in 1E, you get a feat, and there are so many. And so sifting through them can just be a nightmare. That's very fair.
I think 2E could use more options.
Yeah, I figured. The opposite side of the coin on the opposite side of the table.
Let me get my opinion out first because I'm the oddball at the table.
I love 2E, but one of the things I liked about 1E was the sheer number of options. And I don't know, I just like it. I like the crunch. I like it when things are complicated but understandable.
Understandable.
Exactly, which is exactly what 1E was. It's complicated, but once you get it, you get it.
Then I never got it.
You had to work at it
I think the thing about 1E is that there are a lot of options, but there's only so many kind of base builds. For example, if you want to build an archer,
there's lots of options, but there's not a lot of viable options.
There's not a lot of good options.
Yeah. Well, there's the whole spectrum of good, great, and then meh, and then terrible, right?
Yeah.
But like in 1E, if you want to build an archer, there's only so many ways to do that effectively.
I mean, that's true, but it's like that in every game.
Yeah, but in 2E, basically the not great choices are not even there, and you have a smaller list of good choices.
Yeah, but having bad choices and good choices, just the side effect of having a lot of choices.
Right.
But also having a lot of choices means you have more chance for good choices. I'm getting to the point with the investigator where my next couple of feat levels don't really have too many actually great things. What I'm going to do, I'm going to back it down to like feats level 2 or 4. And that's kind of a bummer when you finally get to the higher levels, to not have as many good options at higher levels. And they're all just kind of meh or very situational. But that's also the side effect of situational stuff. It's great when you need it, but most of the time you don't. But that's just kind of nitpicky. I do really want the shifter in 2E.
I agree. I'd love that class.
I did a shifter in 1E, and shifter was another one of those where almost all the options are horrible except for the adaptive shifter. And the adaptive shifter, my beloved, is wonderful. Now, the other one was bad if it had exactly what you were going for, but it didn't have like wild shape willy-nilly. You had specific wild shapes you had to choose, but the adaptive shifter fixed that. But I would love to see shifter in 2E. I think it'd be great. I wish there was more. They've released another rule set for crafting, and crafting was always a complaint. But I think what I'm really looking for is I would like more practical crafting rules, because no matter how you craft, you need a long time to do it. And I would like to have options for crafting that doesn't mean you have to take an entire day to do it. Like crafting options for taking your evenings at the end of an adventure day to do some crafting. Even if it's slower, I think it would make more sense then, because in the middle of an adventure, some adventures just don't have a lot of downtime, and that means you can't craft. So I'd like an option, even if it was a feat you had to take, to craft during an adventure. I think that'd be pretty fun. Pirate Adventure would be kind of fun.
Pirate Adventure.
But we haven't even played the Pirate Adventure in 1E yet.
Yeah.
So we still have that to look forward to. But let's see, other things that are missing. There's not a whole lot that's missing in 2E, I'd say. But I would like the shifter. The one other thing I would have asked for is the kineticist, but that's coming out this summer.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's like the main thing you were looking forward to, and they're doing it. They have a whole book where it's the only class in it.
Yeah, so I am looking forward to that, because I love the kineticist in 1E. Yeah, it's very little things I'm looking for in 2E, because they've got horror adventures, even if we probably aren't going to play them. They've got... I'd like an adventure that's a bit out there. I want one that's a bit weird, kind of like Reign of Winter in 1E.
Right.
One where you don't quite know what's going to happen next. And I also haven't played or even know every adventure path. So maybe there is one like that, but I would like one that's just like, what in the world is going on, but in a good way. And Reign of Winter is my best example of that.
That's a good example, yeah. Joseph.
Thank you.
Your formal title.
That one's for Master.
Count Joseph.
I'm underwhelmed with the wizard in 2nd edition. Just straight up, yeah. I understand that they did have to nerf, and I'm actually glad that this happened, that they had to nerf magical casters.
Yeah.
As far as damages, right?
Yeah.
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 But
they're basically like, they don't let the damage ones like overstep more martial characters.
Which I appreciated.
Yeah. You can still do damage, but it's just, you're limited to like AoE kind of stuff.
there was an archetype that I really liked, and it was also like a hybrid class, the Arcanist, and because of that, the Exploiter Wizard. There is something similar to that, where you're able to like switch up a spell with 10 minutes where you're able to have like a spell that gives you something similar. But I miss the arcane pool. I miss the intricacies that you can conjure up by spending points from that with like...
That's a big 1E mechanic that did not get translated into second edition. Is
Ability pools.
A lot of classes had point pools that you use. That's how the swashbuckler used to work in 1E.
And but the now magus, right?
And the magus, swashbuckler, magus, gunslinger had grit. But rather than do that, they went with the swashbuckler has its 1 point of panache.
Well,
holds.
they've split it, right? Instead of, they just have panache being a on or off thing, but with all these things, either got put into focus abilities or I'm going to use 4E terminology, but that's really what it is. They have encounter powers, they have daily powers, and they have at will powers, right? So they make things like feats or actions in combat with the flourish trait, so once per round or once per 10 minutes. Or focus, which is kind of the same thing, or once per day.
They got rid of a lot of and there were a lot of things that were equivalent to points, like the adaptive shifter could only use its ability a certain number of times a day based off of its level and a modifier. So I think 12 is what I was up to with Pavel. So that was the consequence of getting rid of some of those things.
So I think that's because, Pathfinder 2nd edition sort of does promote a 15-minute adventuring day.
And it's also simpler.
More so than 1st edition did.
I disagree because in 2nd edition, you got basically unlimited out-of-combat healing. And, we don't have a spellcaster, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of daily resources that you have to stop adventuring,
A wizard in 2E is not useless after 2 combats, even at level 1, because they could have like a focus point. And that is, the focus points are essentially your per combat abilities.
Yeah.
Because you can't get a focus point back during a combat.
It's an encounter power.
So yeah, you're right. You could just keep going all day long, but it's a simpler way of doing what 1E did with the point system. Because rather than having 15, and barbarian rage rounds were the same way, because a barbarian can rage all day long in 2E, but in 1E, you had like 5 rounds of rage per day. Or it increased per level. It's just it's how they got rid of that.
And instead of having like 3 different pools of abilities, you have focused.
I think another thing that is quite distinctly missing in 2nd edition is Nations of Evil, just straight up. I feel as though a lot of the evil and bad things have been wiped from Golarion in the course of like 5 years.
Or lessened to a lot. There's evil, but they're not as evil as they were because they got rid of things like slavery.
It's like, no, let us build a party of people that can destroy them.
Like, as much as I'm sure people want to kick the crap out of, capitalists, I could do that in real life if I wanted to. I'm not going to be able to fight off a group of pirates.
Right.
I need fantasy evil, not real world evil. Please, dear God, let me escape the real world evil. I don't want to see Jeff Bezos over in Geb.
So that also encroaches on.
Now I'm just envisioning the undead ghost of Geb as like Jeff Bezos. And I love that.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like an anti-party member today. It's like, nah, I'm happy with the changes.
Yeah, I mean, you like what you like, and that's fine. You don't have to.
No, it's a cool feeling. None of us are
saying you're wrong. It's because 2E is great. It's just a different game system than 1E is, and because of how they've done certain things, don't translate the same. Like the kineticist class is going to be very different than it was in 1E, based off of the the beta. The playtest, it's already very, very different than it was in 1E. And I'm still interested in playing it because I love the kineticist flavor, but it's going to be really, really different than what I was expecting. And it's the same way for a lot of classes.
I got some things I'd like to see come to 2E. A lot of it is looking at my 1E bookshelf and saying like, that was a cool thing. They should figure out how to do it in 2E. One of them, I think, is there are some things that were classes that are now archetypes, and I know why, because the game systems work differently.
Yeah.
But Cavalier used to be its own class.
War Priest was its own class.
Yeah, and they're both archetypes now. I liked the Slayer class. I'm not sure exactly where it would slot in.
Oh, now Slayer class is fun.
Well, does Ranger even work the same way with Hated Enemy? I haven't looked at Ranger.
Basically, Ranger, I mean, Slayer in 1E was a hybrid class of Ranger and Rogue. So you can get there effectively.
Isn't Ranger now more like Slayer was, where it's instead of hunting a specific prey, you just say, I'm hunting you, and it can be anything.
But like there was the flavor around Slayer was really fun. Yeah. And that counts for a lot. I agree with Drow. Arcanist was one of my favorite spellcasting classes. I also really thought Blood Rager was a cool idea. You can do all these things in 2E. It's just they're either archetypes or some combination that you have to put together yourself, but you can do it. It's just, I don't know. One thing I'd like to see more of is we don't have prestige classes in 2E. So there's like archetypes that don't start till higher levels and they kind of function like them. I wish we could see some more of those because I think those are nice.
Yeah.
One non-1E thing that I want to see is I really like Warlock from 5E. And so what I'd love to see is kind of like either a more martial or hybrid martial caster like Magus and Summoner are in 2E, but basically a pseudo-martial witch class that functions like Warlock.
Oh, like with a patron.
With a patron, but a more martial focus. And either with like mostly full martial with like focus abilities or partial casting like they did with Magus. I think that would be really cool. But we'll see.
And Mythic.
That was the other thing I was going to say, as I didn't get to play Mythic, but Mythic was a really big part of 1E and a cool thing. It basically is what happens when you hit level 20, or you want your characters not just be fantasy heroes, but like very strong, potentially deific figures. Like
you want to be gods.
Right. And the game is set up to go past 20, and I think that's where they should think about adding it, because you could just take the proficiency system and go past legendary. Like you could have Mythic 1 or Mythic 2, and then you just scale up your proficiencies even higher.
Or even just a Mythic archetype would work. I mean, it's how it worked in 1E.
Yeah. I feel like you'd have to add both. You'd have to add higher scaling proficiencies, and basically instead of having Mythic ranks in 1E, you just go to level like 30. And then you would have Mythic archetypes you could take to give you like feats and stuff to do. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I could see. Adventure-wise, I feel like there's a massive untapped well of adventures from first edition that hasn't been brought back in yet.
Into what 2E? I'm sorry, because you made me think of this. 2E is missing the answer to what killed those Krakens on the Isle of Kortos.
Yes, we've already been over this.
Yes. The thing is, I think 2E has the best chance of answering it. I feel like we were never going to get that answer with 1E.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun lore stuff to be had for sure. I would love to see them, if they did Mythic, also remaster Wrath of the Righteous while doing it. That would be weird because the setting has moved on since then and everything, but it'd be interesting.
I mean, they remastered Kingmaker. So
yeah. There's also the trouble now with OGL versus Orc content within their setting, which is a good transition point. Now that we've answered Jan's question, we're going to do this bonus banter anyway to talk about a development.
The real thing that second edition is missing.
Well, it's not missing it. It just won't include it going forward. It's being retconned.
Removed.
James Jacobs,
like a tumor,
my beloved, has had to do something unfortunate. So Pathfinder is going through a transition right now because of the whole OGL debacle. They're trying to move everything to be Orc compatible, which is removing a lot of the OGL stuff from the game and replacing
very
it.
Recognizable.
Yeah, so that's what
think red dragons. Think bugbears.
And magic missile.
And
magic
this is
missile.
the whole point
Maybe
of the
even
whole
fireball.
This is the whole point of the whole Pathfinder remastered thing. It's not even really about it is an errata, but the whole reason it's happening is to make the core rules of Pathfinder all be able to be licensed under Orc. Like, it's not an addition change. Everything from core rulebook will still work. You can play either way.
Functionally the same.
The reason,
a lot of things have been reworded.
Yeah, the reason there isn't errata because they're removing the OGL content, giving it replacements, and then errata-ing classes to be more in line with using that stuff, right? But you can still play core rulebook version of everything. The game still is the same. But the thing that has been hit the hardest by this move forward is, so that's the rule side of it. And like that's, some people like it, some people don't, but ultimately it's really a good thing. But the setting side of it is also being affected.
And the biggest thing that has been affected is me.
Yeah.
There are no longer going to be Drow in Pathfinder.
Yeah, it's been tried to be pitched a couple different ways, and basically in the Galarian setting, Drow are being retconned. There's a lot of things that are being changed, like hand wave, oh, well, this monster doesn't exist in the game anymore, so it can't exist in our setting, hand wave. But basically going forward, any new lore books are not going to have any references to Drow. It's
going to be Sneeple.
Yeah, they're basically sort of being replaced with They Were a Myth and Serpent Folk, which kind of is going to make some things hard because in 1E they were a thing and they affected like several adventure paths, namely Second Darkness.
Well, that's how it never got translated over to Pathfinder anyways.
Yeah, but it's still in the setting.
Yeah.
And the events of it still happen. So basically they have to... Drow is like the hardest thing for them because Drow in particular are a very D&D thing.
And it's a very beloved thing too.
Yeah, and
even in Pathfinder.
A very branded thing for D&D though, right? So there's no way they can have dark-skinned evil underground elves and get away with them. Oh, these aren't Drow, they're Gerflarbens,
I like Gerflarbens. Make that canon.
It's very obvious, and like if they want to license this under Orc, then they're going to leave themselves vulnerable. Like that should be under OGL because that's a D&D thing. So they basically have to retcon it, and it sucks.
Wizards.
Yeah, and I think James Jacobs was also like trying to say, well, it's not really OGL's fault, but the whole reason it's not really WotC's fault, but it's like at the same time, the whole reason this is happening.
No, it is
because of that.
The entire reason this is happening is because of bad faith from WotC.
It's that big scare at the beginning of the year. It started a whole bunch of this stuff.
Would not have had to happen had the heart of the OGL been kept up.
Yeah.
This is just necessary reaction to an entirely huge legal scare.
It may have happened anyway because they were already leaning towards getting away from the OGL, but it certainly happened, and maybe because of that.
I feel like if it hadn't happened like this, we would have gotten more retconning. We would have gotten more slow transition away from it, and we might have been able to keep
some of it,
a subterranean elf species. Rather than serpent folk.
I think it's 100% OGL because like they had been massaging the lore to be less problematic because apparently 1E was known as being the edgier version of D&D in like the 2010s.
Yeah, Cthulhu.
And I can see that, but like they're moving away from it being in their mind less problematic, and that's fine. That's its own discussion. But like Drow were in 2E, they're in Bestiary 1, and they were in an adventure path or 2 at this point.
But don't you know that they're a myth created by a Pathfinder to cover up something worse?
I know. So I don't think they ever would have. I don't think they ever would have.
I think that's what they said.
Oh.
I don't think they ever would have like moved. I think they would have just stayed under OGL and been able to use everything from it. And it's really not so much what happened in January, but like the build up to December last year, where like there was a rumored OGL update. If the OGL update never happened and never crossed anyone's mind, we would probably have Drow content in 2E, and that would all be
might have finally gotten our Second Darkness remaster.
Maybe.
And that's how it appears. Who knows? Maybe they would have eventually done this anyway, but it probably would have been different. And
it would have been different. It would have been less ham-fisted.
Yes.
They probably wouldn't have retconned them, just not focused on them.
Yeah.
They would have still been there in the lore. But one of the things, there's a big forum James Jacobs wrote about this, or he was responding to. One of the things he says, we're trying really hard to keep the remastering / orc version of Galarian the same. But in the case of Drow, we've decided to retcon them. Feel free, of course, to use Drow from our previously published 1 and 2e products going forward, but they won't be in Pathfinder anymore. Plots previously put forward by Drow will either be dropped or picked up by Serpent Folk. For example, he gives like different things of the lore.
I would have loved to see this picked up just like straight up by demons. Because Drow in original Galarian were demon worshippers, I'd love to see them replaced by a subsect of subterranean pseudo-demons.
Right. That look sort of like elves.
Maybe.
But are actually just demon-based.
Yes.
Someone had responded, said, this decision I cannot agree with. Drow are my second favorite version of elves, and to see them just cast aside like this is wrong. I've already told people at my table and gaming groups I'm doing the opposite and we'll be banning Serpent Folk instead of expanding Drow lore.
Well,
he says, I love Pathfinder, I love the Drow, and seeing them cast aside in all honesty feels like a good friend being dragged away to never be seen again.
The thing is, and this is going to be very specific towards the group that I am in outside of this group, there is a familiarity to Drow that is not there with Serpent Folk. Drow are, in theory, just elves.
Yeah.
Like you can have, it's just an elf that's purple.
And has dark vision.
And has dark, it is the superior elf.
And light blindness.
It is still the superior elf, okay? You can wear sunglasses. You can't wear dark glasses.
It's also a matter of like serpent people are not even a cool replacement.
Mm-hmm. They could have done something cooler.
Like
not the
even
subterranean demons.
I'm sure there are people out there who love Sneeple just as much as we love Drow. But
I hope that they don't listen to our show.
And they're a myth.
But they're not cool enough.
Yes, they're a myth created by the Pathfinders.
Serpent people should be a race, but they shouldn't be the Drow replacement race.
Yeah. We should play Serpent Skull. Now I want to have some serpent people.
Play Serpent Skull, but erase all the Serpent Folk and replace them with Drow.
Yes. I'm really glad that we're having the opportunity to play Drow's Skull.
Yes.
James Jacobs responded to this, though, and I think it kind of sums up the pickle that they're in, especially with him being a big creative person for the setting. He says 100% understand and empathize with that position, but it's the way it has to be. Part of being a creative director is making tough decisions, and this is one that kind of agonized me to make a call for, especially as someone who put a lot of work into recontextualizing the Drow for 2nd edition in print in Abomination Vaults and not in print in some future plans for them that we had in the works and were really kind of complicated but hadn't figured out. And he says he's trying to, in a way that makes the legacies of D&D not problematic, and whose favorite RPG character spent most of her adventuring career as a Drow before she died in the late campaign and got reincarnated as an aquatic elf.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it feels like he hates having to make this decision, but he says it has to be done for the health of the company and the game going forward, because they need to control their setting.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
Not happy about it.
However, James Jacob, as much as I understand the position you are put in, you have still made a powerful enemy.
Yeah, it just sucks. There's no good... It's not like they're doing this willy-nilly, but it just sucks that it has to happen. But oh well. But before we close out this bonus banter, we have a fun thing to say, an important thing and timely thing. We recently were celebrating my birthday, and my family was over. Mom and Dad were over.
Late birth.
And I'm saying this now because of the episodes that have recently aired. We played board games, and specifically, we played Mousetrap.
Yeah. I was given one instruction when it came to board games for Derek's birthday. I was not to bring Mousetrap, so I bought Mousetrap and brought it.
It was actually really fun.
Shockingly
It's different
fun.
than the Mousetrap of my childhood. It's a different build. Vintage Mousetrap has a different trap.
It's more complicated.
Yeah.
The old one was more complicated.
Yeah.
This one's much simpler.
But like the game itself was also more fun than I remembered.
Much more fun than I remembered.
It's very simple, but it's very fun. And the game, the way like it works is it takes into account the finicky nature of the mousetrap you build on the game board. And it says if the like trap falls on the mice that are there, then you get the cheese or whatever.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, sometimes it don't work. That little diver man goes off course.
Yep. is actually really fun. Highly recommend playing some Mousetrap.
Go to Target, get Mousetrap for $20.
The simpler build really does come down to, does the diver go?
Yeah.
And the old one, there were a lot more ways for it to mess up.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It was surprisingly fun to play it as rules written.
Yeah, very fun.
It's very simple. I think kids love it. The rules are easy to understand. It was great.
Third Gallon approved.
Third Gallon approved.
Stamp.
We played that. We also played Scooby-Doo Betrayal at House on the Hill, which was also really fun.
We're just kids.
We are. Honestly, TBH, the Scooby-Doo version of Betrayal at House on the Hill is probably the superior version of the
Y'all
game.
played. Drow and I mostly did work while y'all played.
Drow was Velma.
That's fine. You had fun too.
I did.
I'm not going to lie. I hate tabletop games.
Oh, yeah.
Was your board games?
No.
All of them?
Yeah.
Why are you at this podcast?
Because I didn't always. This podcast did it to me.
Yeah.
Yay. Oh, I love board games. I love big, complicated board games. I love simple, fun kid board games. Board games are great. I'm going to put out a podcast of me and Jacob playing Lord of the Rings Risk for like 8 hours.
Just audio only.
No edit. Peepus breaks included.
Oh, gross.
I'll be right back. Distant flushing noises.
Right. 30 minutes later. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Bonus Banter. It's another juicy one.
Bonus Banter.
Because stuff keeps happening with PaizoCon and all this fallout from OGL. But thank you for writing in questions. We are always excited to answer them, and we're glad that we have this new format to do it. So we'll catch you in another episode of Bonus Banter very soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Bonus Banter. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing us. If you would like to submit a question or comment for Bonus Banter, please use the Google form linked in the episode description. If you want to see more from us, check out our website, thirdgallon.com, or follow us on Twitter. We are at Third Gallon, that's THIRD Gallon. We are also on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook with the same handle, at Third Gallon. We also publish a video version of this podcast on YouTube, which you can find on our channel, The Third Gallon Podcast. The theme music for Bonus Banter was composed by Alexander Nakarada. You can find more of his work at serpentsoundstudios.com and support him at patreon.com/a-nakarada. That's patreon.com/ANAKARADA. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.